Jimmy Johnson is now joining us. It's Thanksgiving week, so we should tell people that usually you go back to the Keys and you fish. You have an amazing family and you fish and you get like a 48-pound tuna or barracuda or something.
No barracuda.
What do you
don't
get?
mess with barracuda.
What do you get?
Well, we get wahoo, we get dolphin, mahi.
And you throw most of them back.
Well, I release all the sport fish, like sailfish.
Yeah.
So you just hurt the fish?
No.
No.
We wahoo or mahi,
Yeah.
which a lot of people call dolphin fish or dorados.
Yes.
And tuna.
Yeah.
We will keep them. We will clean them. We will give them away to all the people we know down in the Keys.
Right.
If you catch a marlin or a sailfish, you let it go.
Right.
It's a sport fish. So a lot of it's sport, a lot of it's meat fishing.
I've told you, I've always wanted to go with you.
Yeah, well, all you got to do is make it down the Keys. You're only about
17 hours away.
Right. I wouldn't advise driving. Just go ahead and catch a plane.
Why'd you ever choose the Keys?
Well, my exposure to the University of Miami when I was there, I loved I love the weather. You love the atmosphere, tourist type atmosphere. Went down to the Keys, learned how to scuba dive down in the Keys, and I knew I was always going to go back. So when I left the Cowboys, that's exactly where I went, straight down to the Keys. In fact, I bought a home in the Keys the year before I left the Cowboys, knowing that I was going to go back down to the Keys.
It's a great life.
Oh,
I follow
it's
you
fantastic.
I follow you on Twitter, and I see these gigantic fish.
Oh, yeah. I used to say my time at University of Miami, we lost 2 regular season games in 4 years, so it was fun. That was the most fun time of my life. But really, the most fun time of my life is right now, doing Fox NFL Sunday and living in the Florida Keys.
So when you watch these Cowboys and compare them to your Cowboys, what are the similarities? What are the differences?
I think they're very similar. Of course, Jason Garrett was a backup quarterback during those days. We had a quarterback that was conservative, could throw the ball through the wall, was very accurate.
Troy Aikman.
Very, young, strong quarterback. We had a running back that was spectacular, ends up, setting an all-time record as far as rushing.
Emmitt Smith.
And we had a great offensive line. Now, what people don't realize, the difference in the teams, we led the league in defense 2 years in a row when we won the 2 Super Bowls.
Yeah, they weren't good when you got there.
Right.
You made a little trade.
Yeah, we made some trades, and we made 51 trades. And back then, people didn't trade. There was no fantasy football. There was a lot of teams didn't trade at all.
Jimmy, you were one of the first guys who did trade.
We made 51 trades in 5 years. That was more trades than the rest of the league put together.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, the entire league. The New York Giants, during that 5-year period, they made 1 trade in 5 years, and that was a trade with me. Oh, yeah. People didn't trade back then. But once fantasy football and all that started, it started coming along, all the fans said, well, let's trade this, let's trade that, let's do this. But there wasn't a lot of trading back then. But we had to trade to make our team better because when I got there, they were awful.
Yeah. Listen, you watch a lot of college football, so you watch Dak.
Yes.
And my interpretation was, Jimmy, he reminded me of a better Tebow. A lot of underneath throws.
Right.
Big, strong kid. Had a charisma about him. The players liked him. But he wasn't huge. I didn't see a lot of over-the-top stuff. So I just thought he was a better Tebow. I am shocked by this.
Yeah, Bradshaw and I watched him there at Mississippi State. Of course, we watch all the college games together. And you're right. Their style of offense was him running the football a lot.
A lot.
And so we kind of pulled back from him for the simple reason we thought that maybe that's all he was. But he has turned out to, first of all, he's more accurate than I ever thought he was going to be. The other thing is, talking to the Cowboy people, he is such a great person. He has outstanding character. He has outstanding work habits. And so the intangibles that you don't see on TV when you're watching them play, we didn't realize he was at the top of the scale as far as all the intangibles. And, hey, that's a big part of being quarterback because you got to be a leader. You got to set the standard. You got to, your work style, your work ethic, on and on. See, he's doing all the things off the field at a premium level. And that's one reason why he doesn't look like a rookie.
I was saying this, if if Seattle faced Dallas in the NFC Championship, it would be a third-round quarterback against a fourth-rounder.
Right.
And then if New England got to the AFC Championship, it would be a sixth-rounder against Derek Carr, who could be a second-rounder. You were always known as a personnel guy. I mean, I've talked to other coaches. They say, oh, Jimmy's the personnel guy. Could I make the argument, though, that sometimes with quarterbacks, because so much is about non-football, there's sort of some luck involved with the quarterback position?
Well, just like we talked about with Dak Prescott, the intangibles there. That's what has raised his level.
Now, Aikman I saw Aikman in college.
Oh, yeah. Well, Aikman, of course, he had it all. Troy had it all. There was, although back then, people will look back then, there were a lot of people, even some scouts on my staff said, hey, you got to take Tony Mandridge.
Well, what was their knock on Aikman?
Well, he wasn't first team all Pac-10. Rodney Peete was the starting quarterback.
USC.
Yeah, USC. And so, actually, he was second team on all Pac-10. I mean, so it wasn't a, luck.
Hey, a lot of people, myself included, I saw Ryan Leaf carry Washington State.
Right.
I saw Peyton Manning play live, and I'm like, he's too nervous. His feet are ridiculous.
I mean, he's not as big. Is he as athletic as Ryan Leaf? So there's some debate there. But again, this is why you can't, really watch on TV and say that guy's going to be great and that one's going to be horrible. You've got to know the intangibles, especially at the quarterback position. Who would have known Tom Brady would have the work ethic and the preparation and all the intangibles that he has?
He may be the best pre-snap. He's number one in the NFL again against the blitz this year.
Of course, Bill Belichick and I are really close. Bill talks about, how Tom has studied all the tapes before he comes in on Tuesday. He's already studied all the tapes of the upcoming opponent. So he's preparing. I mean, he's preparing himself not only physically but mentally more now than what he did when he was a young quarterback. And that's why he stayed at the top of his game.
So when you look, so we had this debate yesterday. I think that anything in life, you need help. I said with Kirk Cousins, I think Jay Gruden's done a really nice job.
Great job.
I really do. And I think their concepts, he's got, Jordan Reed's been a terrific tight end. And I watch Washington and I say to myself, I don't know if I still love Kirk Cousins, but I love him with Jay Gruden.
Right.
For instance, Tannehill. Now, I like him with Adam Gase.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't like him before Adam Gase. So, I mean, let's just talk Cousins and Tannehill. They look kind of similar, but they're getting better. I mean, who do you like more?
I may disagree with you there.
Okay, who do you like?
I think Tannehill is a much better athlete.
Okay.
I think you hit on something good there, though, is the style of play. Jay Gruden's done such a good job with Kirk Cousins because of their style of offense. Bill Belichick's done a great job with Tom Brady because of their style of offense. You put those two quarterbacks, neither one of those two quarterbacks are as athletic as Tannehill. They're not as athletic as a Russell Wilson. They're not as athletic as a Dak Prescott. So you put those quarterbacks in a different style of offense, they may not be quite as productive.
Right.
But the coaches have done a great job of fitting their style to that quarterback, or at least finding a quarterback that fits what they want to do. And so a lot of this, when picking these quarterbacks, like I said, it's the intangibles, that is so paramount in picking a quarterback, more so than a defensive lineman, a wide receiver. How big are they? How strong are they? How fast are they? Can they make the plays? But you can probably get away with a little bit less on the intangibles. But the intangibles for a quarterback, they've got to be at the top.
Some guys just don't want to get hit playing quarterback.
Some people don't work very hard. Some people will not prepare themselves the way they need to prepare. They may not study the tapes. They may not physically prepare themselves. Look at a Jamarcus Russell. Remember everybody thought he was going to be a big, strong quarterback and throw it all over the place, But he was a bust. He was horrible because the intangibles were horrible.
Yeah.
But, and so the intangibles may not be quite as strong with other positions. But at quarterback, you've got to get the right guy. Now, once you get the right guy, the style of play has got to fit him. And that's what they've done great. Now, as far as the coaching part, I think Adam Gase, you hit on another thing. I think he's done a great job of raising the level of play of Tannehill. Because Tannehill was a wide receiver for a while, there in college.
Yeah.
He's just now learning how to play the position, and he's got as good a quarterback coach as a head coach as there is in the league right now.
Jimmy Johnson joining us, couple of Super Bowls national champ. He's going to talk the games, and he's going to talk Charlie Strong. Before that, though, I just want you to educate our audience because this fascinates me to no end. You were a personnel guy, and so you had the ability to go find a 3-star athlete, and he ended up being unbelievable. There's a multitude of stories. Right. So share with my audience a trick. So when you look at a corner,
right?
Give me the first 2 things you look for.
I want him to be a playmaker. We were looking for a cornerback. We had to improve our football team when I was with the Cowboys in our pass defense. Detroit beat us in the playoffs, and I went to the locker room. I said, we've got to improve, our pass defense. We got to get a pass rusher, and we got to get, some coverage people. And so that was one of my goals in the offseason as far as the draft. First of all, I made the trade as far as getting Charles Haley. That helped us with the pass rush tremendously.
Yeah.
And then in the draft, I looked around and I got a strong safety, outside linebacker type of guy by the name of Darren Woodson.
Arizona State.
And so he helped us in our nickel and then eventually as our safety position. And then I looked at cornerbacks and I looked at a bunch of them. I looked at Buckley, Troy Vincent, but then I picked a little cornerback from Texas A&M who had set a Texas A&M record for punt returns and interceptions. So he was a playmaker, Kevin Smith. He ends up being a pretty good cornerback for us. And then in the 12th round, we had 12 rounds back then, I got Larry Brown, who ends up being the MVP of the Super Bowl in the 12th round. And so, we were able to improve our pass defense with that pass rusher and some defensive backs.
Defensive linemen, by the way, have a history. Like for instance, would you take a defensive lineman who didn't have a great motor, could be great occasionally? Jadeveon Clowney always scared me. What was your theory on defensive linemen?
Well, first of all, just the ability, the size, the speed. Give you an example. Our scout came back from Emporia State. He said, well, there's a big guy that can run pretty good. The intangibles are not there. Well, but hey, he's not a quarterback, so maybe I'll go slide on the intangibles. They say he's really not real good in school. In fact, he won't even go to class.
Oh.
And I said, well, let me check him out. And so I visited with him one thing or another, and he wasn't going to class because he didn't know the material, and he was embarrassed. He's a very, very sensitive individual. Very sensitive. And so, hey, I said, well, I'm going to take a shot on him because he is a big, strong guy and he can run. And here in the seventh round, by the way, I'm going to take Leon Lett.
Oh, God.
And so Leon, we pick up Leon, and he ends up being a great guy and a great player and really had no problems with him, for the simple reason he wasn't going to classes, and the coaches were, he was embarrassed, and the coaches didn't recommend him because he didn't go to class. And so you got to check out the details. So I kind of bypassed some of the intangibles because he had the ability to be a great player.
All right, Jimmy Johnson, Texas, Charlie Strong. 3 years in, they lose to Kansas. He may be a great guy, but is it possible that the Texas job just overwhelmed him?
Well, I think he got caught into a tough situation there, trying to change the offense, trying to do something that he wasn't familiar with. I don't really know Charlie that well. I know Dave, Wanstead knows him pretty good. And everybody says he's a good guy and a good coach. But that's University of Texas. My son played at University of Texas. And so I know the program well. And there's no reason in the world that University of Texas should be losing more than 2 or 3 games a year.
You liked your life as well as football. Austin, Texas. Could I argue it's the best college job in America?
Yeah, it could be. They should be able to get as good of players as there is at any program anywhere in the United States. It's a great academic institution. Academically, they may have some problems getting some of those players in because the entrance requirements are pretty strict. but they still should get the cream of the crop around the country. And it's a great place to live. It wouldn't be a great place for me to live because there's no water around there other than Lake Travis or one of those places. I couldn't get my boat there, but other than the water thing, it's a great place to live, great city, and a great university. And I've got it in high regard. Obviously, my son went to school there.
Yeah. All right, Thanksgiving Day, Washington at Dallas. Now, in a short week, Jimmy, you can't do much prep. Do you just kind of go back, play to your strengths? Dallas says, let's run the football?
Yeah, because we played, Thanksgiving every year, and so you try to get your work in. Now, you stay away from the physical work, but you get your entire game plan in. Now, the visiting team's always at a disadvantage because they've got one travel day there that they can't really prepare.
Plus, Washington played a late game on Sunday.
Yeah,
so that's a big disadvantage.
That's a big disadvantage for Washington. But they can still cram in a couple of days of getting their red zone package in, their 2-minute offense, their base stuff. And at this stage of the season, they're pretty well set with what they're doing, on both sides of the ball. But there'll be a few wrinkles that they'll have time to incorporate getting ready for this ball game.
Okay, Steelers Colts. If Andrew Luck doesn't play, it's a different game. I'll say this about the Steelers. I kind of feel like because of their schedule loosens up, they've got too much talent not to win.
When you got a quarterback like Roethlisberger, you're going to win games. They're not real good defensively, but they have a great, receiver. They got a great running back, and they got a great quarterback. So they're going to win a lot of games.
Yeah. Vikings at the Lions. So Minnesota's got all sorts of injuries. Did you ever have a team like Minnesota that at one point looked as good as anybody? Then you've got key injuries. You go into the tank. As a coach, how do you turn around those losing streaks? How do you take a team you know's got talent,
right,
and they're free falling? It's an avalanche downhill. What do you do? Days off?
Well, obviously you got to shore up the areas where you're hurting in that offensive line, but you got to take a realistic approach of what can we do offensively, and not have the negative play. If you eliminate the negative play, you could be good enough on defense to still win the game. But if you take negative plays on offense, the defense is not going to be able to overcome them.
So would you go to 3-step drops?
Well, I'll give you a quick story. We're playing the Philadelphia Eagles, and they have the great defense. Jerome Brown, Reggie White, Dolman,
all-timer,
Waters, all the great players. Now, they weren't real good offensively, but they were great defensively. And they beat everybody because of their defense with the sacks, with the turnovers, with the interceptions, with the fumbles, and so nobody could beat them. So I went in. Norv Turner and I were talking about this just a couple of days ago, laughing about it. I went into our Wednesday meeting with our team, and Steve Berline was our quarterback at that time. Aikman was hurt. And I talked to the team, and I can't tell you, I can't use the language that I used in that meeting, but I said, offensive line, I said, let me tell you what, and I'm screaming and hollering. I said, I know Tony Wise is not going to like this because he just absolutely cannot stand holding penalties. But don't you let them hit our quarterback. I don't care if you got to tackle them, if you got to gouge them, if you got to grab them by the ankle. You don't let them in there to hit our quarterback. And Berline, get rid of the football. You get rid of that football. I don't want an interception. I don't want a sack. I don't want a fumble. I don't want a strip.
Throw it away.
Get rid of the football. Halftime, he was 3 for 10. I mean, he didn't take that third step back, and that ball was out. He was 3 for 10 for about 20 yards, but we returned a punt. Kelvin Martin returned a punt, and we actually took a lead at halftime against Philadelphia because they weren't good enough offensively to score a lot of points. Well, in the second half now, Berline hit Michael Irvin for a few, and we end up winning going away. But the point being, don't take the negative play.
Don't beat yourself.
Exactly.
Know what you can do. We're out of time. Great story. Great seeing you. Good to have you in Thanksgiving, Los Angeles. Jimmy Johnson, everybody. Hour 2 on the way. Thank you so much, Coach.
All right, Colin.
This is The Herd.